Who do you mean by they? Like you thinking the patients?
Yeah, like everyone in the ward and all the nurses and the aides.
Cody, you want to switch the lights back there,
It
please?
almost seemed like when he started talking, they just went along with it.
Okay, so first thing, Ann just commented about McMurphy. I think we can even just kind of we're just going to put some stuff up here and then kind of come back to it. Today, I'm not worried about focusing in on literary devices or anything like that. It might happen anyway, but more of just kind of going over main stuff. Andy's like, why are these two people always here following you?
I am a big fan.
That wasn't punny. Like, this was your moment to shine.
It is nice in
And
here.
you did.
Why didn't you decorate for my year?
I didn't decorate this year. Other people did it for me.
Oh, really?
Yes. So,
Man, they look so shocked.
Amanda, you look so happy.
Bye.
It's good seeing you. Take care.
You too.
I'll see you around.
Probably.
But already, like the change, it starts to happen in McMurphy. Man, did you want to like share anything on your mind? Like, yeah, okay. Did you get like a Kent State hoodie or anything? Okay. Have you gotten a Kent State hoodie yet?
Yeah.
Was it a gift or did you have to get your own?
My mom got it.
Oh, that's not the same.
Yeah.
Noah, you were asking, like, do you think they know?
I think
And they being, you're saying patients, nurses, aides. I would say no, like, for my opinion. McMurphy does know, I would say, very quick early on, because like I think it's even his first night there because they bunk by each other. He makes a reference. I forget which aide it is, but watch out, he's coming. And Chief like jumps into bed, right away. And McMurphy kind of starts chuckling. I thought they told us you were, it was Deef, I think is the way that they have it spelled. So he, I would say, certainly has an idea early on. Until he raises the hand, I don't think so. Now, I would say that Nurse probably does get very suspicious of him at that point, once the hand goes up in the air. But I don't think the other ones would really know yet at that point. And I bet some even, refuse to believe. Now, before the fishing trip, I'd say at that point it's done. Because Chief's name is up on the board, the guys are looking at it, the aides are like, he can't write or read or anything like that. Why would his name be on there? They go to give him the broom, and Chief just turns around and walks away. And goes, I'm not going to be sweeping. I'm going to Portland to go fishing. So there might be some more clues kind of at that point. But he's probably done a pretty good job of it, for those 10, 15, however many years it's been leading up to that point. And then it's also kind of ironic that it's such a smooth transition.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you
Yeah,
for the gum, so I don't have to chew the old stuff that's underneath my bed. And then it's because even on the fishing trip, it doesn't really say a whole lot. But after the EST treatment, when they go back up to Disturbed, and then he comes back down while McMurphy's still up there and starts telling all the stories about him, and it's as if nothing has ever happened, and they just go into conversation. So
That's why I was confused. They just put like if somebody came into the school and said they were deaf their entire high school career, and then just started talking one day.
right, that part does make it a little bit. I don't know if awkward is going to be necessarily the right, surprising, just that it is that smooth of a transition at that point. But I mean, I would say on the fishing trip and whatnot, the guys know because he's helping out just as much as anything else. But he certainly does become much more independent as the things go on.
Chief is the narrator, so isn't it possible that he just skipped over that, like it wasn't important to him?
Sure. Yeah. The whole him.
The whole reaction to them, like hearing him talk.
Yeah, and I forget the exact line that he puts, but when he does come back, he makes a comment along the lines of it was kind of surprising how non-surprised for lack of a better word, how natural it was, the conversation. But you're right. I mean, the focal point at that point is McMurphy. The stories of him, and yeah, he's getting shot, 3 times a day. He's getting stronger and bigger and whatnot. They don't know what to do with him. So certainly he's still kind of emphasizing that point. But with him being the narrator, yeah, absolutely. There's always still going to be some question. Well, what details does he just gloss over because it's unimportant? What details does gloss over because he just doesn't recognize what's going on? The whole chapter after he gets his ESD, that could be a hard chapter to read and follow. You're jumping from air raid, memory in the military, to then stories about his uncle, grandmother dying, hanging grandmother up in the tree, which is kind of weird, and all that kind of stuff.
That chapter was really weird.
But I would, the best analogy probably for it, and even though Chief is not facing death at that point, you'll hear people talk about, you see your life flash before your eyes in certain moments. I kind of take it being one of those moments where literally it's this whole life, you're just getting bits and pieces and whatnot. I mean, and some of things can kind of happen to us. If you're daydreaming or you just zone out, you might have 4 or 5 unrelated events flowing through your mind. It's probably the best way to kind of how we go put it on paper.
I don't know if this means anything, but I sort of noticed, thinking about it, that, as the more and more McMurphy sort of starts to die down, becoming patient, Chief sort of becomes more.
Yeah, their stocks are going in opposite
Yeah.
directions. And it wouldn't just be Chief that's getting stronger, but it's certainly all of them. And that's really where you can make, I think, the statement that McMurphy, does he intentionally do this? That could be a whole other debate. But McMurphy essentially sacrifices himself
I'm telling you,
for the patients.
And you were right.
I'm telling you, the religious illusions are coming more and more.
Well, because they had plans.
Oh, and they get laid on thick in parts 3 and 4.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot.
And I would certainly understand when we were going over this stuff last week, hesitation of, I don't know, doing all this stuff. But I think by the times 3 and 4 roll around, and again, not saying there's pressure for you to write about it, when it comes to a TWA standpoint, but no, it certainly does get pretty apparent as to what Kesey is doing. I wouldn't go so far as to saying that Kesey is going, I don't think he's making that statement. I would put the does not equal. I think that would be a good addition. But by making the comparison, what does it do, or what does it say about McMurphy's character at least? He does become the what of the story? The hero, I think you said martyr. I mean, you can absolutely make that claim for it as well. When you look at this objectively, when it's all said and done, McMurphy is still a rotten human being. All said and done, if you're looking at his whole entire life, there's not a whole lot of good qualities that have taken place. But has he strengthened these other people? Absolutely. Harding, even makes the whole, yes, we might still be here, we might still be scared and afraid at times, but we are men, we're no longer rabbits. So that transformation has certainly taken place with Chief, with Harding, with Seafeld, with Billy, Fredrickson and the whole crew, and McMurphy would be responsible for it. Does he intentionally do that, going, well, you know what, I'm going to go down, but these other people will benefit from it? That might be a qualification, kind of response. I'm not sure. Angela, since you brought it up, when did you really start?
Oh, I was actually just looking at that. I think it was on page 202. Remember before the, wait, where is it? Well, the one that I was just looking at was the one on 212, and it was I watched them, part of them laughing with them, somehow not with them. I was off the boat, blown up. Oh, here. See, McMurphy surrounded by his 12 people and watched them singing a laughter that rang out on the water in the ever-widening circles farther and farther until they crashed up on the beaches all over.
Okay, so you got the fishing trip that's taking place. Anyone remember how many people go on the trip?
No, it's 12.
Yeah, that's, I was saying 10 plus 2. The 10 patients plus the doctor. And
Okay. So, I mean, you got McMurphy and his whole disciples essentially are going out there on the trip. Before they leave, you remember Alice's line to Billy?
Didn't you say to tell them to be fishers of men?
Yeah, be fishers of men, which biblically is and who are Jesus' disciples? They're all fishermen. I'm now going to make you fisher of men as opposed to being fishermen. So you certainly get a biblical reference there. Fisher of men. You certainly and I don't mean to go quote there. On the water is really where at that point, the patients. How do you know they actually kind of become like human beings? What are they doing by the end? And not just like not partying really, but
having fun.
they're laughing. They're having fun. Laughter is taking place. And really, Harding on that trip makes a very important statement. For the first time, he realizes that what can be power?
Money. No.
I didn't hear what you
Laughter.
Not quite. Because when they gas station, they're not treated well. When they first arrive at the docks, they're not treated well. They have been pushed away, but now what does he realize?
So like they're insanity, they're mad.
He never realized that mental illness can actually be powerful. Yeah, we are nuts. Better believe it.
Bunch of psychopathic.
Yeah. So certainly they're gaining confidence through that. And really with the fishing trip too, when it's all said and done, the guys at the dock, the captain and the people who work for him, even though they're waiting there with the cops, at that point, it's not that, hey, they're pretty good. They did a good job for being from the insane asylum, but the way George parks the boat, the size of the fish that they bring back, they're just pretty good. It's not that you have to qualify that statement, but they're just good for the things that they have done. So that trip is certainly dripping with Christian significance, I would say, with the water and whatnot, and fish certainly, and him and his disciples at that point. But it's also really where, the tide does turn and they do become stronger, more powerful.
This is sort of with the religious illusion. I was trying to remember it. But I don't have this little stretch. But like how towards the end when the nurse is like talking to Billy and Billy sort of sells them out on what they did and then he kills himself, could that be like a religious illusion to Judas?
Yeah, and people will make that connection because, and you feel bad for Billy. I don't think that, to say that Billy, completely turns on McMurphy, I think is taking it too far. Now, he does go, they made me do it, McMurphy made me do it, so the blame does get placed there. The thing that's really striking about that scene, too, I think, is that's really where you see the manipulative powers of Big Nurse. William Bibbett, I am so disappointed in you. And the initial reaction by Billy is, hi! He's not upset at all. Chief makes, he wasn't even worried about pulling up his pajama pants, right away or anything like that. Billy's okay until Nurse brings up, your mother will be so disappointed in you. I mean, she knows that one weakness of all of her patients, and she is able to exploit it to her benefit so far as having power and control. And it's at that point then that Billy goes into stuttering Billy mode, that he gets very upset. And I mean, he's only in the office for a few minutes until he ends up killing himself. And then she certainly gets very pious at that point and goes, well, what do you have to say for yourself to McMurphy? First Cheswick, first Bibbett, now what? You think you're some sort of God at that point. So she's certainly placing blame on him. I think a lot of readers will take it and go, it's not his fault, it's your fault, for what has happened. And again, you kind of go back to those lines that we were looking at last week. False prophets looking innocent, but, her end up maybe having more of that ravening wolf quality about her. Following the fishing trip and the battle scene that takes place in the shower, do you remember the doctor's references to McMurphy when they are going to get the shock treatment and whatnot? There's one line that the doctor mentions twice that I would say you're still going to get that illusion, and then McMurphy poses a question right before the whole shock treatment. But when they first get up there, the doctor makes a comment about his hands. Not like Harding hands reference or anything like that, but when McMurphy and Chief first get up there, the doctor sees them and goes, "I wash my hands of this." And even before right before the treatment, he says it one more time, "I wash my hands of this," which is a line that's attributed to Pilate, Roman governor before crucifixion of Christ. Like this is not on me anymore. Him making that reference to McMurphy, and then McMurphy poses, "Yeah, dude, are you going to give me a crown of thorns too? To go along with the electrodes and all of that kind of stuff." So the EST, not only the table, but you have the reference to crown of thorns. Noise up there, as well as the wash my hands, would certainly say all of that stuff can absolutely be looked at, as being illusions. And again, not saying that it was equal to, but emphasizing that heroic, or as Alexis said, martyr quality about McMurphy. It does elevate him to being the person who's able to save the patients, and they're able to be big enough to now take care of themselves.
Really, when Murphy's telling Chief he's running super quick, and he's now twice the
Ooh-wee,
size.
you're getting big fast.
Because he's it's not even, I guess it kind of is, he's hyping him up, because I think McMurphy kind of caught on to the fact that Chief was fed up being there, but didn't want to make the move until somebody else did.
And to kind of go back to, saying not equal to, why does McMurphy want Chief to get big? I think a strong possibility is he knows Chief is big enough.
I was just gonna say another way that he changed, right when the Black Boys were looking at the list of the fishing trip, they saw him on there and they gave him the mop, to do the 4s and just turned around and walked away.
Yeah. He's like, I don't have time for this anymore. But going to the reason for his growth and McMurphy's interest in it, it could be self-serving. Because what can Chief do, at least in McMurphy's mind? Self-serving. If he can lift up the panel and he can break the window, I can get out of here. Now, it doesn't work that way. He does lift the panel. The whole thing. He does break the window, but Chief is the one who gets out, as opposed to McMurphy since he's dead at that point. But it potentially could be self-serving. But it certainly does ultimately end up being effective. Ways in which you can tell that Chief is starting to grow. Cody mentioned the whole idea that he just turns away from the Black Boys. Forget your mop, your broom. Nope, I'm going fishing. There's a line, I'm not going to repeat the line with that one. But he's off on his merry way. What are other ways in which he is getting big? And certainly picking up the panel would be one of those things.
Did he break one of their arms?
Like with the whole fight. He is. Yeah, you have one hanging on his back, and he's just ramming him over and over again into the.
Did they show that?
The fight scenes in the movie. The biggest differences with the movie. Number one, it's third person perspective. So Chief's not your narrator, which is hard to recreate, in its own right. The fishing trip's a little bit different. McMurphy steals a school bus and they all go fishing. So that's a little bit they literally escape and go fishing. And the ending is still pretty much the same, but I don't think it's as climactic maybe as some people are expecting it to be at the point. But it still holds pretty true. But yeah, just the whole physical fight. Not only is he bigger, stronger, and he is 6'8", 280, but that's not something that he would have done before. I mean, you're talking NBA power forward, large man.
Is the fight also McMurphy's breaking point? Is that where McMurphy starts to go downhill after the fight?
I would say
That's
more
what
like
seemed-
Billy.
You could even say, well, starting to. I think you could even say before, because his face is tired and worn out, even on the trip home from the fishing trip, before it. But certainly the fight and then the electric shock he's getting shocked almost daily, for a whole week. That's certainly going to be physically draining. I would say that certainly expedites the process of him coming down. Remember anything else with Chief where you can tell he's getting big?
Starts talking.
Yeah, just the conversations that start to happen. So we know panel, fight, talks. He gets out of the fog after the. Did I steal it? I'm sorry. I'll still give you credit. There's a moment when he looks in the mirror, and he does kind of go, I am looking big. Starts to flex a little bit. Not really, but we'll just pretend he does.
That's what I imagine.
Probably did more of like broad shoulder, that kind of thing taking place.
Like looks across himself.
There's a great little detail that I love that Kesey throws in there after he suffocates McMurphy before he rips out the panel. Where I think really is a nice little transition from McMurphy to Chief.
He puts on the hat, but the hat's too small.
Tries to put on the cap, the hat, but it's too small. And significance of that being, McMurphy is always wearing a hat. It's McMurphy's hat,
And he's big.
and he's always bigger than Chief. He is big. And him trying to put the hat on, which is not going to fit. But the whole idea that, like, for him, it's almost a little bit of, and it was silly that I tried, because of course it was too small, but it's just a little way to kind of, I think Angie mentioned as McMurphy goes down, Chief gets bigger. At that point, the difference, obviously because of McMurphy's death at that point, but, even his hat is too small for Chief. You talk about, those are some big shoes to fill. You would think that from Chief's standpoint, there's no way I could ever have any part of McMurphy, but nope, I'm too big for that.
I was at the end after he broke out the window when he was talking about his running. He said he just felt like he was floating when he was running, and he just felt his feet on the grass.
And with that whole scene, there's also, when he's on the grass, there's still the squirrel holes that the dog was sniffing at before when he was looking out the window talking about that road. The dog is showing the way out to the road and talking about McMurphy and maybe some dog. Dog's not there, but he's still getting to that road. And even, so far as talking, like he mentioned the guy who gives him the ride with the sheep truck, telling him stories and things like that, which you never would expect Chief to have a conversation with a total stranger, let alone somebody that, loves, respects, whether it be McMurphy or any of the other patients. So the fact that Chief does grow so much, character-wise, what does that make him? Makes him a dynamic character. And there are certainly other characters throughout which you could argue being dynamic, but that can kind of be a little literary device to keep in the back pocket. What's going to happen on Monday? I'll give this to you. It's not like you have to write this down, but this is from the shock chapter where the whole life is kind of flashing before his eyes, and the nursery rhyme comes up. We're going to specifically look at this passage a little bit, see what things you're kind of just like taking from it now at this point, having read the whole book, maybe some ideas that are starting to pop into your head, and that'll transition us into Tuesday where we can take a look again, big picture now, reinvestigate those themes and devices that we were looking at, just so you have an idea of what are ideas, concepts that you can make reference to when it comes to Wednesday. All right.
I'm not giving your Tuesday, can I take the lip terms quiz?
Yeah, someone else asked me about that. I can give it to you Monday, because I'm sure you probably don't want to do a TWA and a lit quiz simultaneously. I don't blame you.